Hey guys, I know a lot of you watch my channel because you've got the itch and you're looking to make your next knife purchase, which I totally get because I'm also a knife guy. So I invite you to open the description of the video you're watching right now and click here on my Amazon store where I've compiled some of my very favorites. As you can see, my most recommended knives and my favorite budget knives are right at the top, but there's also categories like knife maintenance, pocket clips, knife storage and display, and then a whole bunch of knives by popular brands. There's something down here for everybody, so make sure you take a look. Thanks. What's going on, YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review slash knife overview to do with you guys. This is the Spartan Harsey folder, a knife that has been very popular for a while now. Very, very beautiful variant of this knife. This knife was sent to me by @CuttingEdgeGear on Instagram. Please give this man a follow. It's because of people like him that I'm able to bring you guys daily knife content. It's my understanding that Cutting Edge Gear is an avid collector of these knives in particular. That's pretty cool. I can completely understand why people collect these. I remember when these first hit the scene, and I had been made aware by Bill Harsey. This was my introduction to Spartan knives, but Bill Harsey, my initial introduction to him was actually the Fantoni HBO1. And funny enough, the HBO1 is, if you guys have been following my channel for a while, my wife's favorite folding knife ever as a non-knife person is the HBO1. I recently did a video where I laid out like every knife in my possession on the table and had my wife eliminate them one by one. And she got down to this one and she was like, this is my favorite. And I was like, that's a Bill Harsey design. Anyways, I thought that was pretty interesting. The reason I'm telling you this is because Bill Harsey designs are notoriously you can pick them out because of the lines. I mean, it's not like all of his designs look exactly the same, but Harsey designs are distinctly Harsey, is the reason I'm telling you this. And I feel like it's easy for me to see the similarities between this and, for example, the Fantoni HBO1, especially in the blade. Whether you are brand new to my channel or you've been around for a while, I upload daily knife content. I love doing it. The channel does get expensive, however, so if you'd like to support me and get your hands on some cool stickers, as well as gain access to my once-a-week Patreon exclusive content, you can follow the link down in the description of my Patreon, have a look around, and if you'd like to support me, it would absolutely mean the world to me. Anyways, let's go ahead and get a measurement on this guy. This is not a small knife, coming in at a little over 8.75. It's like 8.8 inches overall. Blade length coming in at 4 inches. Cutting edge coming in at about 3 yeah, it's like right there. There's no sharpening choil. We'll call it 3.75. There's about a 1/4 inch there between that sharpened edge and the back of the front of the frame. How about some size comparisons? Let me go ahead and move this guy down here real quick. Up against the Ontario Rat Model 1. Rat 1 coming in at 8.6 inches overall, so this knife is a little bigger than the Rat 1. How about up against the Spyderco PM2? Spyderco PM2 is coming in at 8.3 inches overall. How about up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue? Ritter Hogue coming in at 8 inches overall. And last but not least, the Spyderco Para 3. The Spyderco Para 3 coming in at 7.25 inches overall. How's the action on this guy? So this is running on phosphor bronze and is 100% meant as a hard use cutting tool. You can see on one side there, actually the washer's a little bit bigger. The action is very similar to a Sebenza 21, except that there's less, I'd say less resistance. There's not friction inside of a Sebenza or a knife like this. It's essentially more or less resistance. And the reason I'm telling you that is because this knife can easily be wheeled out, and it can also be flicked out, which is a little bit easier to do on this knife than it is on a Sebenza. I think if I get my finger in exactly the right place, yeah, I can do the reverse flick on it too. On this knife, at some point, I promise I'll do a demonstrational video on how I do this, but it's, instead of pushing the meat up against that thumb stud, I use the underside of my fingernail and then find the angle that creates the kinetic energy buildup and then, fires it out. So you can do that. It is extremely solid. No play up, down, left, or right. You can sort of shake this knife shut. It feels very similar to how a Hinder XM18 feels on phosphor bronze washers. In fact, that's a good size comparison that we didn't do. This knife is very Hinderer-esque, and being, oh good, I didn't realize that. Actually, Cutting Edge Gear, you're going to laugh. That's actually you messaging me right now. Let me go ahead and make sure that Sorry about that. Not sure exactly where I'll cut that, but I had to cut the video because my phone vibrated and I realized it was actually Cutting Edge Gear messaging me in the middle of the review. But anyways, this knife is very Hinder-esque. It's not quite, the Hinder is not quite as long. You can see there, blade stock thickness is similar. It's a little thicker on this guy, a little bit thinner on this guy, but the titanium thickness is similar. Jimping appearance is similar. The standoff appearance is similar. I mean, there's a lot of things. This has got a filler tab. There's a whole bunch of stuff. Initially, that is what attracted me to this knife, was the fact that it looked so Hinderer-esque. However, you can see there, the Spartan Harsey is just a little bit longer. These are also in the same price range, which is why I think it's appropriate to do that type of comparison. Let's see here. Carry profile. There is no flipper tab on this knife. I wouldn't call it overly thick. I mean, it's thick, but I mean, you can see here, it's just ever so slightly thicker than a Para 3. I mean, it's a big knife. It's just, I wouldn't call it excessively thick. Let's do height here up against the Spyderco PM2 and Para 3, two knives that, in my opinion, have awkward carry profiles, and nobody ever seems to complain about them. You can see there, it definitely is going to take up more room in the pocket than the Para 3 in terms of length. Not in terms of height, though, and it's roughly the same in terms of length as a PM2, and still not in terms of height. It's just a little tiny bit thicker. Let's go ahead and use my new calipers here. I think you guys maybe at this point will have seen me unbox these. These are undoubtedly nicer calipers, so I appreciate Mr. Andrew Toole, I believe is who sent those to me. And they are also, oh, you know what? We should probably, yeah, well, no, that's accurate. Is that accurate? Sorry, these are brand new, so I'm getting used to them. So we start out 0. I've got tape on here to make sure I don't touch the metal part of the calipers to the blades. But yeah, very accurate. 0.156. That makes perfect sense to me. Andrew, I love these much more than the terrible ones that I was using previously. So thank you so much. But yeah, there you go. Blade stock thickness is roughly the same as a lot of your typical ZT knives. Not quite as thick as a Hinder. Let's go ahead and weigh it. We are looking at titanium on both sides that is not milled out, and it is a pretty large knife. I think the weight's still going to surprise me a little bit here. Yeah, it actually weighs less than my Hinder XM18 in full tie. 6.07 ounces, and the Hinder XM18 full tie actually weighs just slightly more, being a shorter knife with less cutting edge. So yeah, this is a big knife. It's going to be too heavy for a lot of people. Carry profile is not bad at all. If you're used to carrying a larger knife, of course, if you live in an area where that's acceptable, and you don't carry anything else in your pocket, and you wear heavy-duty pant material, jeans, right, things like that on a day-to-day basis, maybe you work outside, this isn't going to bother you. If you work inside at an office, or you're going to a cocktail party, or you're going to church, or something like that, and you got thin dress pants, or you got skinny jeans, or you got athletic shorts, no, it's not going to work for you. To me, it's more about carry profile. I don't mind the weight. Some people do. It depends on, what your measurements are. If you go by ounce and inch, you go by, just anything over 4 ounces. Everybody's got different, sort of ways that they determine whether or not that's appropriate for them. But use your best judgment. It's going to be better for some people and not as good for other people. So, anyways, let's go ahead and take a look at this. You might be wondering, do they all look like that? Actually, there's a ton of different configurations that this knife can come in. These are expensive, high-end production, kind of borderline mid-tech knives. Depends on how you define that. There are some elements of this that have human attention and other elements that are produced by machine. But they are definitely above your typical Spyderco Benchmade ZT Wii type production knives. There is a little bit more that goes into them, including hand sharpening, probably hand tuning and assembling, I believe is the case, very similar to Rick Hinderer knives. We are looking at titanium and S35VN on these. If you the area that, or the site that I discovered these on originally was Monkey Edge, and actually they're a pretty good source for these. Right now, no, I don't get anything with Monkey Edge. They don't even know that I exist. But your standard form of this is just, as you might expect, tumbled and tumbled, which starts out about $460. We're going to talk about that. And then they have a whole bunch of different versions that have various laser etchings and anodizing and things like that. They've got a bunch of different colors. They've got ones with compasses on them. The Spartan helmet here, whole bunch of different stuff. Those go up to what I've seen about $525, sometimes $540, and I would imagine they might increase depending on how exotic it is that you're looking at. But for the most part, these knives seem to hover around the $460 to $540 mark. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check on this guy. Get out my handy dandy WIA bit selector and WIA magnetic driver, two items that are ridiculously inexpensive that I can recommend to everybody. This short little fat guy is really easy for applying the necessary amount of torque without over tightening. Really, really nice. You can find both of these items down in the Amazon store that I talked about at the beginning of the video. There's also knives and a whole bunch of other stuff down there. But if you're looking for this, just open up the store, open up the section that says knife maintenance, and you can find these pretty easily. I'm going to guess that the pivot is just enormous. I kind of want to try. I feel like it might be a T15. We're just gonna barely set it in there because I do not want to leave a mark on this beautiful knife. Yeah, that's a T15. That's awesome. The bigger the better, honestly, because it's just less likely you're going to strip anything out. I'm going to guess the body screws are T10. Oh, that's T9. Let's try T10. We're going to try T10. It might be a T8. I don't know. This might be a little big. Yeah, it's not a T10. Let's try the T8. I don't check because I've got such a, like before the video, I don't check because I've got such a bias against T6 or below. And I just want to experience the knife before I start judging it for the size of the hardware. Yeah, that's T8. So that's perfect. T15 on the pivot and T8 on the body screws. I have no issue with that whatsoever. For anybody who doesn't know, the reason that I put such an emphasis on that is because when, a knife like this, if you use it and then you want to take it apart and clean it, it's a lot easier to do that if the heads are a larger size and the teeth of your bit don't strip out while you're trying to turn it, or worse, the hardware actually strips out, and then you gotta, if it gets stuck in there, that's a huge problem. So it's nice that they are T8. I really appreciate that. On the other side, you can see here, got some pocket clip screws that honestly also appear to be T8. And then the other side of the pivot, which is also an adjustment head, appears to be T10 as well. On this particular version, we're looking at a DLC-coated titanium frame with this beautiful Spartan etching on there. That's really nice how they do that. And I also like the bronze-heated hardware. I believe this is actually all titanium. I'm sorry, not titanium, steel. I'm going to use the magnet here real quick. Actually, no, that hardware appears to be titanium, and then the pivot is steel. I noticed that when I had the WIA, the magnetic driver up against it, but I didn't want to do that again, just use something soft like that magnet. But yeah, looks like a steel pivot, which makes sense. I mean, either way, it's fine, even if it was titanium. And then we have the titanium bronze anodized hardware. And then the thumb studs, that's actually something I'd like to test out. It's probably going to magnify to the blade. No, the thumb studs appear to be titanium as well. I think I'm right about that. I was trying to hold it away from the blade, which is obviously steel. But that's interesting. Bronze treated. And then the filler tab also matches the theme of the knife, which I think is really cool. Some people don't like filler tabs. I do. I think they're neat. It's essentially the part that you'd take out if you wanted to switch the pocket clip over to the other side. The pocket clip obviously is going to be, well, we might as well check that. Yeah, pocket clip is titanium, and I'm going to go ahead and guess that the standoffs are too without touching the knife again with that. But there you go, titanium hardware all the way around, titanium frame. The only thing that's steel is, of course, the blade and the pivot. You might be asking, why didn't they do the pivot in titanium and make it bronze? I don't know. Aesthetically, that might be the only thing that I don't super love about this knife, is that it all seems to have this general flow of like black and bronze, and I feel like the pivot would have looked a lot better in titanium, but it's not that big of a deal. It's not something I'm going to sit around and complain about. S35VN blade, it's got a flat that carries out about 75% the length, maybe 80%, carrying some good thickness out to the tip, very similar to the hinder or spear point blade. It does come down to a reasonable edge, though. This is a knife that's meant to be used outside, and it's meant to be used hard. That is actually how they describe it. It is a hard use cutting tool. And I believe that it can do that. But it can also do your general EDC style tasks. The blade looks good. The blade doesn't have anything else on it except USA S35VN, and then it shows right there the Spartan Blades logo, which is actually what's etched in there. And then your Maker and the Harsey logo there. But yeah, it's kind of weird that it doesn't have a sharpening choil. I kind of wish that it did, but it doesn't. It's not really that big of a deal. Everything just looks great. Moving down to the handle, you can see here everything is nicely chamfered. No sharp edges or anything. In fact, ergonomics on this guy are just perfect. Everything kind of falls nicely into place. You actually have enough room on the handle to actually come back here, back away from the primary choil. And then if you want to choke all the way up here behind the blade, doesn't have a forward choil, but it's close enough, right? Thumb studs are not really in the cutting path, you know. It's right there on the line. You're still going to make use of 99% of the cutting blade, so I don't know that I've really got a problem with any of that. I really like how the handle looks. Some people might not like how busy this is. Like I said, if you want one that's plain, if you want one that's busy, you know, you've got a lot of different options there. But as far as I understand it, it's not really like custom requests. It's just however they show up at dealers. Maybe they do that. I didn't see any indication that that's the case. It just seems like whatever's available, kind of pick what you want there. I love the even smoothness. It feels very, you know, DLC coated titanium, nothing blotchy, no blemishes or anything like that. It's very even, very smooth. I love the contrast of bronze on black in this case, and I really like the Rick Hinder style standoff, so it looks really nice. Blade is absolutely 100% perfectly centered, and your lockup, which it's not a titanium a steel lock bar insert on a titanium lock. It's just carbidized titanium on the lock face of on the tang of the blade, which is just fine. Doesn't need to be a lock bar insert. It looks like it's locking up something like 40% or so. So that's great. Disengagement is super easy. There is no double clutch or anything like that. It's very easy to just do this all day. And once I got used to the feeling of the phosphor bronze, it honestly is really easy to deploy. In and out of the pocket, this thing is no problem. It feels extremely similar to a Hinder XM18. You do have a fairly large amount of this knife sticking out of your pocket. I'm not going to call it deep or shallow, but it's definitely more shallow than normal. It's kind of in between that medium and shallow carry. Not really that big of a deal, you know, considering how big the knife is, but just know about that much of the knife is going to be sticking up out of your pocket. I do like how the pocket clip looks. It's a very Rick Hinder style clip. The way that it's seated, the way that it's shaped, except that it's got the arrow on there signifying Spartan blades. I think that's really, really cool. As you can see there on the inside, what are we looking at there? I thought I knew exactly what that was, but now that I'm looking at it, I don't know that I do. Is that the, oh, that's the over travel stop. It's on the inside. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. Can we see? Yeah. Stupid of me, of course. I was about to, actually, the whole time I've had this knife, I thought, why doesn't it have an over travel stop? And then fortunately, right, I should have just looked in there. But you think you know everything. You can spend as long as you want with a knife, and I can prove myself wrong right in the middle of a review. The lock bar, or I'm sorry, the over travel stop and stabilizer disc is Rick Hinder style, but it's on the inside of the frame. Now, to access it, you'd need to take the front scale off. I don't think that's that big of a deal, but it's nice that it has it, you know? I don't necessarily think that folding knives have to have lock bar inserts, because there is a benefit for carbidized titanium directly on a steel tang versus a steel lock bar insert interacting with the tang. Titanium's a little more sticky, right? So the benefit is it's a more stable locking system, slightly, right? Don't fear your knives that have lock bar inserts. But the entire lock bar would have to be replaced if it wore all the way over, versus a lock bar with an insert, you could just pop the chip out, right? But I feel like they should all have some sort of over travel stop. You can, if you put enough force on that titanium lock bar, you could actually bend it out if there were no over travel there, right? But there is, so that's nice. And since it is Rick Hinder style, not only does it stable it this way, it stables it this way as well, which is nice. So you can't push the lock bar like into the frame. So that's really cool. So anyways, price on these guys, and by the way, very comfortable. I think we talked about this, very comfortable. Jimping is very functional. This is a knife that really feels like it's incredibly purpose-built. And that's, Bill Harsey, if I'm not mistaken, was military, and he was very into building purpose-built knives. And that's what this feels like. It absolutely feels like a tool. It's a bonus that it's got some aesthetic dressings on there, but like I said, you don't necessarily have to have those. You're actually going to pay less for a version of it that doesn't have those, right? This is S35VN, which is, in my opinion, one of the best stainless steels for harder use, whether you're working with a folding knife or a fixed blade. Obviously, there's different steels for different circumstances, but I really like S35VN for its edge retention, its toughness, and of course, its corrosion resistance. And I believe it is amongst, if not the toughest stainless steel out there. Not as tough as like 3V, but if you have to go with a stainless steel and you still want edge retention, right, and you're really going to be doing stuff that would require a blade that has high toughness, S35VN is absolutely the way to go. So anyways, prices on these guys range from about $460 to $540. And considering a Hinderer XM18 that's built very, very similarly, I mean, all the way around, the way that it's put together, the hardware used, the materials used, right? Hinderer XM18s with G10 front scales and titanium lock faces and S35VN or M390 or 01 or whatever it is that you get, those run at base $425, which, you know, compared to the $460, help me out, what's my math here? $425, it's 35 bucks more? I hope that's right. 35 bucks more and you get full titanium. And in, you know, in this case, if you wanted to go up to, I think these run about $525, you're going to get like some custom etching and titanium hardware. This knife, as it's configured right here, my Hinderer is full titanium and M390, and it's $625 in that configuration. Now it depends on, you know, where you see your value. You know, some people enjoy the aesthetics more or less with the Hinderer versus, you know, this. And these are not sold with titanium scales. You have to buy them, you know, aftermarket, and they're fully modular. So some people see a benefit to that. It just depends on where you see, you know, your value, or where you know, place value, I guess, on your knife. But honestly, for how these are built and what they are, at a base price of $460, I am completely on board with that. The fit and finish is there. The materials are there. The execution's there. Like I said, it's a truly purpose-built folding knife. I mean, if if Cutting Edge Gear wanted to, he could absolutely take this out and really use it hard. I mean, to me, it's a little bit too pretty, but if he wanted to, he totally could, right? I love these. I'm so happy for an opportunity to have handled this, and I'm totally on board. I think these are awesome, and I'm really happy to come to that conclusion because it always looked like a knife that I would really enjoy, and it's nice to find out that I do. I think that's going to be pretty much it. These are definitely going on my most recommended knives playlist, despite them being expensive. Please understand, when I say I can recommend a knife, even though it's this expensive, I don't necessarily mean everybody should rush out and buy it. I'm saying anybody who, you know, is looking to spend this much money, you know, is this a recommendable item? Yes, it is. If you are ready to graduate into this tier of folding knives, are you going to get your money's worth out of this knife? Yes, I think you are. And I think a lot of different people can enjoy it, considering it's, you know, more, you know, catering to a larger audience, carry profile, blade shape, materials, things like that. Some things are very specific to certain crowds of people. This one kind of fits nicely into what a lot of people look for. Anyways, guys, that's going to be pretty much it for today's review. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like. So check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on this Metal Complex logo right here and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.